Okay, welcome once again to another compelling and up-to-date webinar featuring Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zehavi. Sarit is the founder and president of ALMA, which is a nonprofit and an independent research and education center specializing in Israel's security challenges on its northern border. Sarit has briefed hundreds of groups and forums ranging from U.S. senators, congressmen and women, politicians, senior journalists, and visiting VIP groups in Israel and overseas. Sarit scripts numerous position papers and updates focusing on Lebanon, Syria, and Israel's national security challenges. She had served for 15 years in the IDF, specializing in military intelligence. Sarit holds an MA in Middle Eastern Studies from Ben-Gurion University. Her unique achievements led her to be selected by the Jerusalem Post as one of the top 50 most influential global Jewish personalities of 2021. Before we begin, I'd like to show a video that an anonymous soldier had sent us from Israel's northern border.
Small sample of some of the weapons that we found in South Lebanon. This is about, I think, one of about 10 trucks that we've loaded up of weaponry in the past, just in the past 5 days, just from a single village. You can see here about hundreds and hundreds of rockets, mortars, Katyusha rockets. More over here. We have crates and crates of RPGs, explosives. All of this going to be used, planned to be used against Israeli civilians. All this found in the homes of Lebanese in southern Lebanon. Here we have hundreds and hundreds of different rifles, guns, automatic rifles, sniper rifles, Kalashnikovs. All of these found in homes in southern Lebanon. The amount is really difficult to fathom, and we've basically just been loading up trucks and trucks and trucks over the past few days that have been coming out of Lebanon.
I think it's really important that people understand this and recognize the threat. The threat that is coming from quote unquote innocent Lebanese civilian homes in southern Lebanon and the tunnels that might actually come into Israeli communities and homes. And there's nobody who is more of an expert on this than Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zehavi. Sarit?
Thank you very much, Sarah. You know, like looking at this video, it's like we knew all along, and yet to see this again and again and again, by the way, every day videos like this are being published here. It's overwhelming. It's I have no words to describe how we feel when we see this. I live 9 kilometers from the border. For those who just joined us, it means that we hear the sounds of war here all the time. Just before I started this webinar, we had some blasts here. We had alerts in nearby communities. This is just another day, another day at the office. It's not something new. I'm speaking to you, by the way, from the bomb shelter at my home. My little girl went to school today for the first time after 2 months that it didn't go to school, because the Home Front Command made a little bit of relief, and they enabled us to send the kids to school only if they have classrooms that are in shelters, in safe rooms, and we don't have enough of these. So she will be able to go to school for 2 days a week. Like they improvise different classrooms and shelters all over the community. And As long as the fire of Hezbollah will continue, this will be the situation. You showed the video. I want to share with you, I want to go backwards with your permission, just a little bit backwards, and to show just a little bit of the statistics of what we have been facing here in the past year, right until this, I would say, Israeli offensive in Lebanon started. And in a minute, we'll take a look at the timeline as well. So between October 8th to September 17, this was a pretty stable war of attrition, with maybe a little bit here and there, but a pretty stable war of attrition. Every day, few attacks of Hezbollah against Israel. I would say that one attack means 50 missiles or 20 missiles or 5 missiles of 10 rockets, different amounts of projectiles or UAVs. So these numbers are numbers of attacks. Like we just had an attack of 50 rockets to the Galilee here. That's one attack, but 50 rockets. And as you can see, about half were targeting civilians in Israel. By the way, all in all, until today, we had 40 civilians who were killed, 40 soldiers and 25 civilians who were killed since the beginning of the war in the Israeli side. If I want to talk about changes, something started to change. In June, something started to change. At first, we thought we can find a pattern of why sometimes they are launching rockets to areas that are not evacuated. We have 43 communities, 60,000 displaced Israelis since the beginning of the war that are evacuated in areas which are 0 to 5 kilometers from the border. Anything that was launched further to this range is in this graphic that you see, and you clearly see a change in June. Something happened in the policy of Hezbollah. I cannot point the finger of what exactly, but of course there was Israeli retaliation to all of that as well. And I think this is what eventually brought us closer to the Israeli decision that we need to bring the people back home, and we need to move from defense to offense, because basically between 8th of October 2023 and September 17, for some, except for what you see on the screen now, except for these, it was defense. It was Israel attacking immediate threats or sources of the shooting or commanders. That's basically was the policy. It deeply changed. Turning point. The first turning point was the killing of 12 Druze children in July 27, and then we saw that Israel retaliated in Beirut against Hezbollah, and things we felt that things are different, are becoming different, until the cabinet decision, September 16, to finally add the returning of the Israelis back to their homes, to the goals of the war, meaning that we lost any hope that this would be solved in peaceful ways. From that moment on, Israel actually was putting two efforts with regard to this offensive. One effort was all about removing the strategic threat of Hezbollah, making sure that Hezbollah is not the huge monster that it used to be, either by elimination of munition, I would say advanced munition, accurate munition, long-range munition, whatever, or by elimination of its leadership commanders. Up until today, more than 160 Hezbollah commanders and leaders were killed in the current campaign, since October 8, not since September, including the Radwan, 25% of these are Radwan brigades commanders. This is highly important because the second goal of these of this offensive is to remove the threat of an invasion of Hezbollah into Israel. So this is kind of the steps that you see that eventually brought us to the point that today we have an IDF ground operation, boots on the ground in Lebanon. What you saw in the video is the outcome of that. And we have daily attacks of the IDF to various areas. And I want to start from the attacks to try to make us understand what does that mean and why do you see about 1 million Lebanese that are displaced and a lot of damages in Lebanon. The weapons of Hezbollah were stored in Hezbollah areas of operation. It's South Lebanon, but not only, it's also Beirut. It's also the border between Syria and Lebanon. We painted these areas in yellow because this is the areas of the base of Hezbollah, the areas where the Muslim Shiites of Lebanon are living, and the majority of them are supporting Hezbollah because for 40 years Hezbollah was the only one there for them, the only one that provided them with from dignity to money to energy to education, medical services, anything you can imagine, basically replacing the Lebanese state. And that enabled Hezbollah to hide the various types of munition that you see here in those places. And that's why in order to completely change course and completely end this war in a completely different strategic situation, it was very important for the state of Israel to attack the various types of weapons that are stored also in Beirut and also in the Syrian-Lebanese borders, which are advanced, as I've said, advanced weapons. The weapons with high signature are those who are based not next to the border, but elsewhere. The weapons which are long-range missiles or medium-range, those who can get to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, are stored not in South Lebanon, but elsewhere. And that's what you can learn from this map. And I think it gives you an understanding of why there are Israeli attacks in those places that do create a lot of damages, but also create a lot of secondary blasts. And from these secondary blasts, there are casualties, Lebanese casualties, meaning that IDF bombed the warehouse of weapons, and then you see rockets like flying everywhere, spreading around and destroying houses, which are not necessarily the same house as the warehouse. Another thing that Israel is doing around that is attacking the smuggling routes of Hezbollah into Lebanon, of Iran into Lebanon, of Syria into Lebanon. I can tell you that on one of the boxes that were found, like you saw in the video, you saw many boxes of munition. One of them, not only one that was published, probably more than one. We saw something was written in Russian, and we translated that, and what was written is that this is Russian munition that its address was to the Ministry of Defense in Syria. But we found this box in South Lebanon, where we are maneuvering. So clearly there was a huge project of smuggling munition, Russian munition, Iranian munition, or components to build munition into Lebanon. And part of this project were the border crossings that you see here, 3 of them. I don't know if you can see my clicker, but can you? Okay, 3 of them, those 3 were already attacked by the IDF. The problem is that these are the official border crossings, while there are many, many more that are not official. The border is basically open. There is no fence there in most areas, but a lot of roads in areas that trucks can actually drive on. And it's going to be a huge challenge to seal this border from smugglings. Israel at the same time is also targeting, in order to bring to a strategic change in the situation, it is also targeting the state within a state of Hezbollah. Like as I've said, Hezbollah provided the Shiite Muslims of Lebanon everything that the Lebanese government failed to provide. Part of that is the banks of Hezbollah. Terrorist organizations are working with cash. When you bomb a bank, you do create damage. and you also create some kind of psychological damage. We know from Lebanese sources that about 16 buildings of Kard Hassan, which is the bank of Hezbollah, were attacked by the IDF, and also energy infrastructures of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is providing gasoline and energy to its people, and they were also attacked in especially in those areas of the Syrian-Lebanese border, Baalbek. The second goal, as I've said, of the Israeli maneuver or the Israeli offensive in Lebanon is the goal of preventing another invasion. The one from Gaza and the one that was planned by Hezbollah in the north. This is why we have boots on the ground, because you understand that the weapon caches can be bombed from the air. But once you have first underground infrastructures and second tons of munitions next to the border, you must take that out in order to enable to the people to come back, because people will not come back if they know that in those towns or open areas next to the border there is a terrorist and there are anti-tank missiles that can literally point their missiles into the windows and kitchens of the men, women, and children living in the communities that you see on my map now. All these blue dots on my map are the Israeli 43 communities that are evacuated along the Israeli-Lebanese border. And it was important for me to show you the map. This is about 120 kilometers length, this border, even though if you try to measure from the Mediterranean all the way to the border with Syria, it's much less than that. It's about half of that, about 70 kilometers. But the border is not a straight line. And that's why you end up in 120 kilometers that you need to protect. And in 120 kilometers where UNIFIL is deployed. The area that you see in my map is most of the area where UNIFIL is deployed from the blue line to the Litani River. And I want to talk about what the IDF is bringing out from the UNIFIL area of operations. Since the IDF maneuver, maybe I should bring back the map again. The IDF maneuver is not to Beirut, is not to the Litani River, which is somewhere over here, 25 kilometers from the border. It's only few, even I would say very few, kilometers from the border into Lebanon. That's it. It's 4 divisions that are doing a great work in clearing the towns, the villages, the open areas, what we call in the contact line, in close to the border. That's it. That's the mission that the IDF received from the Israeli government. I don't know if this will be the mission next week, but basically IDF is now saying we are about to complete this mission within days. We are very close to completing the mission. We took off everything that was there. One of the things that was there were tunnels. Now, in Alma Center, we spoke about the tunnels of Hezbollah many times. I cannot say I'm surprised. As I've said at the beginning of this conversation, I can say that I'm overwhelmed. Because to see a video like this of an IDF soldier walking inside the Hezbollah tunnel that was found right next to the border, and to see everything prepared, the bags are packed, the weapons, the vests, the helmets, and in a minute you will be able to see the motorbikes as well. Everything was prepared for an invasion. Just the only thing that was missing was the order. Again, I have no words to describe. And this is one video out of many. You see the motorbikes now, out of many that are now being published by the IDF again and again and again. I can say, we analyzed some of the videos that IDF published of the blasts, of the attacks of IDF in Lebanon, and you can see the routes by the blast. You see like maybe 8 or 10 blasts along a line that starts from a town and end up in open area. that its length is more than 1 kilometer. And you understand that this is a tunnel. What was bombed was a tunnel. I want to end my presentation here with the UNIFIL. And I want to say something about it. Throughout the years, and we've met many times, I never said that UNIFIL is not implementing its mandate. I never said that we demand UNIFIL to implement its mandate, because I was aware of the problematic way this mandate was phrased, and you can see the mandate on the screen now. There is a contradiction between Article E here and Article 12. Article E put all the onus on the Lebanese armed forces, while Article 12 is very clear with what is demanded from UNIFIL. UNIFIL throughout the years used to tell us Israelis, we're sorry, it's not our mandate to disarm, it's not our mandate to enforce, the word enforcement doesn't exist in the resolution. It's not our mandate, the mandate do not allow us to enter into the towns and villages, meaning into open, private territories, private properties in Lebanon. We cannot do that by the mandate, and that's why we cannot find those weapons of Hezbollah. Now, I must tell you that at the first few years after the previous war in 2006, Hezbollah did transfer most of its military assets from the what we called back then nature reserves, meaning forested areas in South Lebanon, into the towns, because it's knew that UNIFIL will not enter into the homes. What happened along the years, it's been 18 years, when Hezbollah saw the weakness of UNIFIL, it understood that what's the problem? They can operate both inside the towns, inside the villages, but at the same time, they can operate in open areas as well, in both places. And the astonishing thing that we see now is that IDF is finding tons of munition and underground infrastructures also in the open areas, areas that there was no excuse for UNIFIL not to enter. There was no reason whatsoever by the mandate, with all its problematic expressions, to enter to what you see in the video now, which is a tunnel of Hezbollah, maybe 100 meters from UNIFIL position. And we took the video that was taken in the terrain, and we analyzed the terrain, and we showed this is an open area, and nobody owns this property. UNIFIL's mission, and clearly when a tunnel like that is being excavated in the rocks, you need equipment. You see somebody is digging in the ground. UNIFIL was looking for people with uniforms. As long as Hezbollah was wearing civilian clothing, there were civilians. That's it. There were civilians, no problem. This cannot last. This situation cannot last anymore. That's it. It just can't happen anymore. And when we speak about solutions, ceasefire, I hear people telling me first cease the fire and then negotiate solutions. And why not? I'll tell you why not. Because once there is a ceasefire, or as President Biden called it, a pause, he wanted a pause of 21 days, Hezbollah is not going to sit down and drink coffee. Hezbollah will smuggle everything that Israel took from it during the pause or a ceasefire, and at the same time, it would do anything it can to make sure that the ceasefire will last forever with no agreement, as much as possible, as much as it can. And that's why our leadership is saying very clearly, we will negotiate under fire. Now, one more thing. Nobody in the international community was putting a pressure on Lebanon to cease fire as long as there was no Israeli offensive. I have no normal life since October 7th here, since October 8th, 2023. I can't sleep at night since October 8th, 2023, because I hear the blast. Like, if we have a quiet night, we wake up in the morning and we say, oh, tonight we slept well. We didn't hear the blasts. But this is the unusual situation here. And nobody demanded a ceasefire. Only once Israel started an offensive, all of a sudden there are pressures for a ceasefire. So no, we believe that the only way to stop the violence will be a diplomatic arrangement. We strongly believe in a diplomatic arrangement because we cannot eliminate each and every launcher that Hezbollah hided underground or in the houses of the Lebanese. The Hezbollah worked according to the principle of redundancy. It is everywhere. As you saw in the video, the soldier testified, it is in every home. It will take years to go to each home. So it is clear to us that a diplomatic arrangement is needed, but we need your help to make a better one. Not to go back to the previous one that clearly created this monster that we see now. I think I can stop here and maybe answer your questions.
Yeah. All right. That was really brilliant. And I have tons of questions. First of all, I know you have studied Amos Hochstein's diplomatic solution. How is this any different from UN Security Council Resolution 1701? And would the Israeli government accept any kind of diplomatic solution where the IDF itself does not enforce the border with southern Lebanon?
First, I would say that everything around, I need to make a disclaimer here. Everything around what Amos Hochstein is working on is based on open source publication that we don't know the reliability of that. According to these reports, whether American, Israeli, or Lebanese, what we learn is that there are a few principles that we can conclude that are now they are working on. First, yes, 1701 is still a reference, unfortunately. I would want 1559 to be a reference, meaning disarming Hezbollah completely and not just up to the Litani River, because every day, including today, we have rockets fall in the center of Israel. These are missiles that are not stored in South Lebanon. That's the first principle. Second principle is that Lebanese army will be responsible, according again to 1701, and that's why Lebanese army will get more support for international community. But here there is an essential problem. In Lebanon, in opposed to the rest of the world, Hezbollah is not designated as a terrorist organization. So the situation in Lebanon today is that there are ministers in the government of Lebanon which are Hezbollah. And at the same time, we demand the government of Lebanon, as it is separate from Hezbollah, to disarm Hezbollah. It will never happen. We need to make sure that Hezbollah is not a legitimate entity in Lebanon. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, they will pretend. And here I want to say something to Americans. An agreement is the beginning, the starting point of solving the problem here. It's not the end of the problem. The end of the problem is the implementation of the agreement. And in the Middle East, there is a huge gap between the agreement and the implementation of the agreement. We need to work about the mechanisms of implementation of the agreement. Amos Hochstein is saying America will give guarantees to Israel. That's very good news. It didn't exist at the first few stages of this war, but I don't have enough details of what does that mean. And I truly don't know what does that mean. I would love to know what does that mean. I don't understand whether the reference of 1701 is also a reference with regard to the Lebanese commitment to truly disarm from the borderline to the Litani River, because in the past year we had many proposals that the disarming of Hezbollah would be only 8 to 10 kilometers from the border. Like, we have to compromise on what was already decided upon. So, and we didn't hear this again like in the last round, so I don't know where this is going. I don't know what prices we are demanded to pay. I can say only one thing. As an Israeli, I want to make sure there is an effective mechanism of enforcement, and everybody needs to know that any effective mechanism of enforcement is a mechanism that, or a force that is willing to fight or clash Hezbollah, because Hezbollah will not voluntarily disarm in South Lebanon or elsewhere. It's just not going to happen, especially not as long as it is a member of the Lebanese government. Just to give you a small example, the minister in Lebanon, who is responsible for all the exits and entrances of Lebanon, the Hariri airport and the border crossings that I've shown you, is a member of Hezbollah. This minister is making sure that Hezbollah controls the airport.
Impossible, impossible. So, at this point, is there any kind of diplomatic arrangement that Israel would accept?
Of course, as I've said, we need a diplomatic arrangement. I want my daughter to go to school. In order to do that, we need a ceasefire. In order to get a ceasefire, we need a diplomatic arrangement. So clearly, there is a diplomatic arrangement. But this diplomatic arrangement needs to include an effective enforcement mechanism, and we should stop fooling ourselves that UNIFIL is the answer or Lebanese army by itself is the answer. We need a complete envelope around that of what do we want. If it's the Lebanese army, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. You are going to give tons of money to the Lebanese army and it's not going to happen because Hezbollah is legitimate.
Right.
It should be much more than that, than just the money.
Right. So, and according to your maps and everything that you've been doing sort of throughout the years, how many tunnels like the one that you just showed us exists going into northern Israel?
I don't know how many tunnels. I believe that it's more than hundreds of kilometers. Due to what you see that is now being revealed only, as I've said, in few kilometers next to the border. Unbelievable amount.
Right.
That's
Right.
and I want to say that these tunnels, I'm just looking at my cell phone because there are more alerts as we speak. These tunnels are not only used for the invasion plan of Hezbollah, they are also used what we call strategic tunnels. These are used for enabling Hezbollah to transfer launchers and military operatives from one area of Lebanon to another. As clearly we saw, there are tunnels next to the border that enabled Hezbollah to hide very, very close to the border and then will be able to cross very quickly and surprise us. There are tunnels that enabled Hezbollah military operatives to approach the border with civilian clothing and then next to the border to wear the shoes, the uniforms, the vests, the helmets, and the guns and get into Israel. There are tunnels that enable them to hide from the IDF soldiers. I just want to mention here, Sarah, that there are very little amount of battles between IDF soldiers and Hezbollah, face-to-face battles. They are either launching munitions to the IDF soldiers that are entering Lebanon from a little bit of a distance, or they just ran away. This is truly astonishing, this fact. And it creates a lot of buzz, the fact that Nasrallah was killed and millions were displaced and damages, create a lot of buzz in Lebanon now. And we see this in the battlefield as well.
Right. So do you think it would be preferable if there were a direct combat between IDF soldiers and Hezbollah?
No, I think it's great that there aren't any.
Right.
More battles, more casualties. We don't want that.
That's right.
But it says something about them. They are much more cowards than what we thought.
Right. So recently, the IDF captured a Hezbollah sea captain. and detained him. What is Israel looking for when they detain the sea captain?
So if I'm reading here from a report that we just published about this person, to kidnap somebody from in-depth in Lebanon, it means that he is very valuable. He's very valuable for two reasons. He knows stuff that we want to know, and he plans things that we want to avoid, that we want to prevent. We believe that the arrest of this person, who is a senior in the maritime unit of Hezbollah, will disrupt the activity of this unit and also will shed more light on what is this unit. We believe that this unit planned to infiltrate into Israel from the sea, to attack our gas rigs, to launch surface to sea missiles against our Navy ships, and to send explosive boats, and sometimes even unmanned explosive boats and other maritime weapons against Israel and against Israel's assets in the sea. We believe, and we don't have a confirmation for that from information, but we believe that the maritime unit of Hezbollah is also involved in smuggling weapons. I talked about the ground corridor of smuggling weapons and the aerial corridor from Hariri airport, and there is a maritime corridor as well. And there is an option that this person was involved in this as well. Again, I cannot confirm that, but I think this is why he was arrested. Was kidnapped, actually.
And so UNIFIL just this past week claimed that Israeli troops have attacked it. What's the actual truth behind this story?
That attacked UNIFIL.
Yeah, that the IDF has attacked UNIFIL.
Look, I can testify from my most personal experience as an officer. Back then I was a major in the IDF. UNIFIL, in the IDF maps, you have a definition of enemy and definition of those who are not considered enemies, but they are in the enemy area. In Lebanon, or whatever, Gaza, whatever, wherever it is. This is civilians, it's international forces and international organizations. Israel and IDF forces have specific definitions, marking, and orders to make sure that IDF is not targeting none of these, ever. Okay, they are not considered enemies. Neither the civilians, nor the UN forces, nor the any international organizations, the humanitarian organizations whatsoever. When Hezbollah is using UNIFIL as human shields, you saw clearly how close they are to their positions. Launching rockets, I have another video that you can see that they are launching rockets from 100 meters from these positions and less. Building positions of Hezbollah next to the UNIFIL positions. When UNIFIL refused to evacuate from an active war zone that we requested them to evacuate, insisting on staying there, under the excuse that they need to provide humanitarian aid to the population that was evacuated. There is no population in most villages, or very few were left. So who they are giving humanitarian aid to? And if they are giving humanitarian aid, do we need 10,000 UNIFIL soldiers to give this humanitarian aid to those very few who were left? So sometimes they get hurt. War is, by its essence, it's chaotic. War is not sitting at the office and making plans. It's a chaotic situation. It's a violent situation. It involves blasts and damages. And we knew that it is dangerous to stay in those areas, and we ask them to leave and they refuse. Now, I don't know what happened in each and every incident. That in one of them I know, okay? In one of them I know that what happened is that we had soldiers that were injured, and the only way to evacuate them outside of Hezbollah sites so they can continue to launch their projectiles against these injured soldiers and those who came to rescue them was to enter a little bit into the UN position, because this was an area that Hezbollah could not see, and rescue the soldiers. Instead of helping us rescue the lives of our soldiers that are doing the job instead of UNIFIL, we are being criticized for breaching to a UN position. This was not the situation. We have no interest of doing that, because look how we are criticized for that. There is no reason for us to do that. Every soldier in the IDF knows that UNIFIL is not the enemy. I don't understand why UNIFIL is not evacuating. I don't understand why the same UNIFIL who was that afraid for its life from Hezbollah decided to risk its life for nothing in the current situation. I don't understand. I don't have the answers for that.
So, can there be an agreement without international forces?
Wow. Maybe. I cannot overrule that. I thought about it, that maybe having an agreement, I will put it in a little bit different way. Maybe an agreement that is based on a United Nations Security Council resolution is not the best and only option, because it means that Russia and China will be involved in phrasing it, like what happened in 2006. Maybe it is better to have a bilateral agreement, while the US can, again, give us guarantees. The same idea of what we had with the maritime agreement. This could be an option as well. I don't see anybody going in this direction yet. Maybe it's a combination. What is now being discussed is a combination. Let's have an agreement for a ceasefire. The United States will give guarantees, but it will be based on the ideas of 1701. And I think we need to, it's not a bad idea, but we need to, again, we need to enforce it, and we need to make sure that the principle of enforcement is very clear, very effective, and no questions around that anymore.
So, is there any way that you can guarantee that Hezbollah will not reincarnate itself, even if the IDF is successful, getting rid of most of the Radwan Force and cleaning up the
No, we
tunnels?
are not going to get rid of most of Radwan Force, because we are only maneuvering next to the border, as I've said. They already withdrawn up, further up to the north, and even north to the Litani River. The question is whether we will be able to take off all the munition that was stored there. I think that our government is not interested that we would be the one to do it, because it's boots on the ground for a long time. I think that the international community proved in the past that it can do that if it is interested. It happened in the past. There were effective forces fighting ISIS, for example. It's a good example. I am not sure that the international community is willing to do it in Lebanon. The scenario that is very likely to happen, and that we are very much afraid of, is that Hezbollah will recover. Is that nobody will enforce the resolution, and we will have the fourth time invasion into Lebanon sooner than later. That's the biggest risk. It's a very physical and realistic risk. One out of few risks that we can talk about at the moment. Okay.
So, is there any way to contain Hezbollah without directly attacking Iran and Iranian forces in Iraq and Syria?
I'm not sure. I think, that, the first question we asked after Nasrallah was eliminated, what's the Iranians are going to do? Like, Hezbollah completely disappointed the Iranians, completely. It was their best proxy, and as I've said, their performance is poor, but we have between 100 to 200 rockets that are launched to Israel every day. Okay? But this is 10% of what we thought they would do. For us, the fact that there is a policy of launching between 100 to 200 rockets every day, the fact that there was a Hezbollah drone that targeted our Prime Minister's residency, can indicate that there is a direct involvement of the IRGC. Somebody is running the business, and there is no strong enough leadership in Hezbollah to do it. And I think that the Iranians are deeply involved in the most tactical levels here. That's I don't have any information to support it, but that's my assessment. And I agree that as long as we are not dealing with that, and it doesn't look like we are dealing with that, the smuggling of weapons will continue. And Israel will have, in this part, I believe that Israel will try to enforce as much as possible. I don't know how much we will succeed.
Can the Air Force go over the Shiite-controlled areas of Iraq and Syria and try to get rid of these capabilities?
You cannot do everything by the Air Force. That's the lesson that we are learning from both Gaza and Lebanon. Those underground facilities, either you don't know of each and every one of them, or they are not being destroyed just by Air Force. You need the boots on the ground to put the explosive inside and destroy them. It's house-to-house warfare, and we waited for too long. Not only in Lebanon, as you said.
Right. Yeah. We unfortunately, Israel's been kicking the can down the road with this, and you were predicting this for years and years. Okay. So how would you envision an end to this war? And could there be an independent Lebanon ruled by the Maronites or other minorities, not dominated by Hezbollah? And how might that government look like?
So it's two separate questions. Assuming that my government is not interested in a long war that will never end, and I want to believe that my government is not interested in that, because again, I want my daughter to go to school every day and I want my life back. I believe that my government will make compromises around that. Also will make compromises thanks to the achievements that we already gained in Lebanon. We cannot underestimate these achievements. All these pagers and Nasrallah and warehouses that were destroyed. Hezbollah today is not the Hezbollah that it was 2 months ago. So the question that at stake is the recovery. That's the biggest question. And here I believe that there will be compromises, but it will be under the working assumption that if Hezbollah will try to recover, Israel will have to act. And it will be an open question of when. Exactly. After a few weeks, after a few months, after a few years, what's the red lines? We will have to draw red lines in opposed to the fact that we didn't in the past. As for Lebanon internally, I can say that that's the second risk. I said there are a few risks in the current situation. That's the second risk of a civil war in Lebanon. It's also a problematic situation for us. Hezbollah is weaker. The voices against Hezbollah are louder. But since the Iranians decided not to abandon it, I'm not sure it's enough. And I can say as an ex-intelligence officer, this is the hardest to predict. The hardest to predict is popular revolutions, that something just blasts and you don't know. And you didn't see it coming. It's the same with the Islamic Revolution in Iran and the civil war in Syria, I feel like. So it's difficult to predict, but it's a risk. A risk with a lot of hopes, as you said, that Christians will finally lead this country to a better future.
And I know a question that's foremost on everyone's mind is the elections and, the pros and cons of the elections. What is the feeling in Israel right now?
So I can tell you that for us Israelis, and I will be very honest with you, maybe I'm speaking for myself, I don't know, I can't speak for all the Israelis, but I didn't feel that I can say this president or the other. Eventually you have your own interests and problems. We have ours. It was a dramatic night, not only for Americans, it was a dramatic night for Israelis as well. But what I can say is that election day was a day that everybody in the Middle East waiting for. Not only in order to see who the next president is, of course this is very important, but also we wanted to pass that date. We are waiting for the Iranian attack. They promised to attack us for the third time. And now it's the countdown for this attack. And it's a huge question that what's the policy would be of an administration that doesn't have the election on its shoulders anymore. Is it going to change the policy of this administration? I'm talking about from now to January. Or is it going to be more of the same? And I don't know the answer. I'm not an expert to American politics, but I can say that this is the question that we ask here. And for us, there is a lot of expectation that, okay, you passed that date of election day. It is what it is. It has nothing to do with Israel, clearly. Now let's do our best to end the war in the best way possible for Israelis.
So, I was in Israel on April 13th when Iran attacked again on October 1st. When Iran attacked, and Israel responded in a very precise, calibrated fashion. Also, considering warnings from the current administration and the White House. I know that Israel is bracing itself for another Iranian attack. Many has made some really dire threats. Do you feel that Israel might launch a preemptive strike before Iran has a chance to attack again?
It's an option. I don't know. We also don't know what this Iranian attack would look like, because today we heard different kind of reports that indications or clues that maybe there will be involvement from Iraq or from other areas as well. Now, I don't know about the capabilities. The Iraqi proxies of Iran already sent I can't remember the exact number, but around 200 attacks, a little bit around 200 attacks, I can't remember the exact number, since this war started against Israel. Again, each attack can be more than one drone, mostly of drones. Many of them didn't reach to Israel. They were lost along the way or intercepted along the way or whatever. So I'm not sure about the capabilities of the other proxies to truly create. They can attack, but not. I don't know about the damages in large scale. But I think I want everybody to remember something very important. Even if there is no damage, you have around 8 million Israelis that are going to shelters in each of these attacks. That's the majority of the Israelis. Now imagine that in the United States. Okay, nobody get killed, few damages here and there, but Israelis are living under the threat that any minute they need to run for shelters and hide from ballistic missiles that are launched from, I don't know, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Iran itself. We should not accept that.
It is totally, totally an unacceptable situation. Is Israel still targeting the Lebanese financial institutions or the Hezbollah-controlled financial?
Okay, we never targeted the Lebanese financial institutions. We targeted Hezbollah financial institutions. I don't know whether we destroyed all of them. If we didn't, we will destroy more. By the way, Card Hassan, the bank that was attacked, is under American sanctions since 2016. So it was a completely legitimate strike.
Right. And how far north do you think the IDF can go?
On boots on the ground?
It's on the ground.
I don't think there is any option that we will cross the Litani. For now, even as I've said, the Israeli government decision was boots on the ground only very, very few kilometers from the border, and IDF already announced that it is completing its mission within days. And I don't see any indications that it's going to go further than that, but I don't know, maybe, I don't know. As I've said, it was a dramatic night in Israel as well. Yes, for everybody, I don't know if you heard, Netanyahu fired our defense minister. So things will change, but I don't know exactly how.
Yes. So I cannot thank you enough, Sarit. Yeah, first of all, for how prescient you have been for years and years, predicting this, watching the tunnels, going into the tunnels, mapping, Hezbollah's movements, knowing what was underfoot, like another October 7th that was being planned from Hezbollah. You have been right all along, and we are also so grateful for you for being up there in Israel's north, putting yourself and your family through this. It's not easy, and I just wish you all the luck in the world, and I hope that the IDF can keep you and your family safe from now on, and that you will have a wonderful, happy, healthy, and blessed New Year, and that there will be an end to these attacks.
Thank you, Sarah. I just want to tell you that I don't feel I predicted anything. I feel that I stated the obvious, and at the same time, I wish I was wrong.
Yes. We all wish we were wrong, and that we had been wrong about a lot of things all along since the beginning of the Oslo Accords. But anyway, God bless you and thank you. And my husband is reminding me we are having a wonderful dinner coming up November 19th, where we're honoring Ambassador Herzog and his wife, as well as the wonderful and heroic Masab Hussein Yosef, Elise Stefanik, and Jared Moskowitz, and Shabbos Kestenbaum, all amazing speakers of the truth who have, particularly Masab has risked his life in order to tell the truth. And this will be November 19th in Washington, D.C. And if you'd like to know more about it, please go to www.ametonline.org. And again, thank you so, so much, Sarit. God bless you.